Good afternoon and welcome to our monthly webinar series. I just want to take a moment to let everybody know this morning, New York's JCRC hosted a meeting on the Iran war and had Israel's Deputy Consul General on talking about what's going on in Israel, how it affects us here. And one theme throughout that conversation this morning is the resiliency of the Jewish people, the resiliency of Israelis. This is one of our objectives today. I'll ask you the question individually and both organizationally, can we increase our resiliency by training our congregants and members of all our communal facilities? The answer to that is yes. Simply put, our goal is to train at the highest levels to save lives. In January, many of you heard from Steve Weiss, a survivor of Tree of Life. He talked about that action that he took that day during Tree of Life, his understanding what happened, running away, warning other people, and getting help. Today, we have the honor and privilege to have Jeff Cohen, a survivor from Colleyville hostage attack. Jeff will take us through that 10-hour standoff. He'll discuss how he managed the erratic behavior and violent tendencies of the hostage takers. You will hear from Jeff in about 10 minutes, and I'll introduce him. Before we bring him on, I want to talk to you about really what does run, hide, fight look like. We talked about it briefly, that run and hide during Tree of Life. Today, we want to use Jeff's experience and talk about that fight back portion and how it looks. However, I always want to give this admonishment. We need to be ready. Fighting is our last resort. But if something happens, we need to make sure we are able to take care of ourselves. So with that, I want to first just really talk about our situational awareness. And I had planned to do this in less than 10 minutes so I can get our guest speaker, Jeff, on. And I want to talk about what that situational awareness looks like and how our heart works and the psychology behind how we operate under times of stress. So today, what I hope at the end of this, that every attendee on the line will understand that when we're out and about, the worst time to be tuned out is when we're out and about and moving in public. We see people walking down the street with their cell phones on, headphones on, could not respond to anything. Where should our level be when we're out and about? Well, I think we want to be somewhere between that paying attention and tuned in, right? If something bad happens, if the hair of our neck starts going up, we want to make sure that we know how to operate. Tuned in when something bad happens, and then when our heart rate increases and something very violent's about to happen, we're in that red alert stage where we're actually able to fight back. We're able to do that. What I really want to focus on today is not being paralyzed with fear. Why do I say that? It's going to be abundantly clear to you when we talk about fight back and movement. It's so important that we have to have that situational awareness around us so we can react. Folks, in a kinetic, violent situation, we have three options. We can fight, flight, or freeze. We absolutely do not want to freeze, right? That is about the worst thing we can do. Back in 2008, I was still in the FBI then and working crisis response. And there was a book that came out called The Unthinkable. It was written by a clinical psychologist named Amanda Ripley. And what she really coined is this denial, deliberation, and decisive act. And she took throughout her book different events, whether it's man-made, it's a terrorist attack, it's a weather-related attack, it's a disease outbreak. And she really talks about how much we're prepared, how much we train, really gets us from denial to deliberation to decisive act. Really? And so something bad happens. That's how our brain processes that information for us to act. Those unprepared folks sometimes will just generally freeze. Let me just give you two statistics why this is so important. There are many active shooter training protocols out there. We focus mainly across the country. The most well-known is that run, hide, fight. That's what we talk about. And we're going to focus on the fight. But you may have been through avoid, deny, defend. Alice training is probably the most extensive one. It's a 2-day course: alert, lockdown, inform, counter, evacuate. That's how I was originally trained on this before going to the Institute down in Texas to talk about avoid, deny, defend. And so for our community, I want to focus on that run, hide, fight. Folks, they are all the same. They are absolutely all the same. We want to get our group, we want to get our folks away from the danger. So let's go through those tenets real quick. What does that look like for us? Run, and I'm going to go this lightning quick. I'm not going to read from here. What do we want to do in case of an action? Where do we want to be if something happens at Beth Israel in Colleyville? Where do we want to be, right? I want to be in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, sitting on my couch watching the Steeler game. That's where I want to be. Okay, we want to move our way from that distance, right? We want to make sure we get out of there. What most people do in a violent, especially in an active shooter situation, they hide. And most times they hide. They just get down and they freeze. That's what we're trying to create. Or not create. We're trying to prevent somebody from freezing. So if you can't run and you can't get out of there, you're going to hide. And I hate the word hide. We're going to shelter in place. We're going to barricade. And everything we do when we're barricading, when we're hiding, we are preparing to either escape, run, or fight back, right? So we are not just sitting under a table, calling 911 and hoping for the best. We are preparing. And so we're going to talk about that last resort. How do we fight back? And so I want you all to ask yourself these 3 questions, and we could talk about it briefly. I want you to hear from Jeff as well. Jeff probably didn't go through that denial, deliberation, and decisive act because that was a slow burn, as you're going to hear from Jeff. And then it happens, and then they form their decisions. What we're going to talk about with Jeff today in Colleyville is probably our worst case scenario, a barricaded hostage situation. But these questions: what weapons can you use? Look around where you're sitting right now. If you're home, you're in an office, you're going to collect weapons of opportunity. Fire extinguishers. We all carry around those heavy water bottles, staplers, anything, chairs. And you're going to hear about that infamous chair throw from Jeff here in a little bit. Very important. The next thing is that positioning. How do we position ourselves, right? We really want to talk about that space, movement, time, and space. Where should we be? And so if we're in that hidden, barricaded room, and if we know that attacker's trying to get in, where do we want to be? That positioning can help, right? We're not going to want to be in behind the room. We're going to want to be right in there when he gets in and bash him over the head. And we're going to talk about swarming, right? How does that look? What does that fight back look like? So position is important for us. Time and space. The last one I want to talk to you about is aggression. Can you fight to save your life? This is really an important question for everyone to think about as we're going through training, as we talk about this. I grew up in a family that, just like you all did, is, fighting. This is not the way. We teach to be nonviolent. However, when you're in that situation where somebody's threatening your life, can you have that intestinal fortitude in you to fight back? Can you become someone you have never thought you were to fight back? I would venture to say that a lot of people on this call today may have never been in a physical altercation. This is what it might come to. I hope it doesn't, but we have to prepare at the highest level. Fighting back. I am a United States Marine Corps officer before I came into the FBI, and I was a very little baby Marine, 2 foot high as a Marine. You are taught at the very beginning, violence of action wins the day. And I can't stress that enough. We give you, as my colleague David Pollock says to people, we give you permission to fight back. And our whole goal here in the fighting back as a last resort is we want to force that attacker to make different decisions. We want to alter his point on what he is going to do to hurt us. We want to make sure we make him do different decisions. We want to confuse, disorient him. We want to interrupt that thought process. We are buying time, folks. When we talk about run, hide, fight, we talk about that 3 to 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes when law enforcement is on its way. We have to prepare to be able to live on our own for those 3 to 5 scary, scary minutes. So let's talk real briefly, and then I'll bring Jeff on about how does fight back look like. So there's two really ways of fighting back. The first one, we'll just talk distraction. It's exactly what you think it is. It's screaming at that controller, spitting at him, throwing something at him, hitting the alarm, right? Making that person force different decisions. Movement. So if somebody does come in, you want to move. Let me give you one more statistic that I think is important that we're all taught when we go through Alice School or one of these schools when we're teaching the community. And that is these active shooters typically hit 70% of their targets. That means 7 out of 10 bullets are hitting flesh. Why do they hit that high? Is because our community, not just the Jewish community, the community at large freezes. They don't fight back. Conversely, when police enter and they're entering that dynamic situation, they only hit, even as highly trained as law enforcement is, 25 to 30%. What does that tell you? Movement matters. You can move. So that is distraction. The controlling is a different story. That is what we typically would think is fighting back. There are strength in numbers. We can swarm. Secret Service has coined this term, is that swarming. We have 4 people around the person and really taking them down and controlling that. Attacking that weapon. If it's an AR-15, it's going up there. We're going to attack that weapon in a swarm situation, folks. And really, that is what we're looking to do. We want to give you the ability today to hear from Jeff, talk to Jeff, ask him questions on what it's like to be a survivor from one of these incidents. And with that, we're very fortunate to have Jeff Cohen here. Jeff is, again, I'm a hometown Pittsburgh guy. Everybody has a Pittsburgh connection to me. Jeff is a engineer who went to school at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He's getting ready to retire as an engineer. So not only do we have Jeff, who has done some heroic actions, we got a really smart guy to tell us a story. Jeff, why don't you kick us off and tell us what happened that day?
Okay, so good day, everybody. This is my view of what happened on January 15th, and it's my view from inside. And the reason I say it's my view is there were probably 235 law enforcement plus double that of other types of people who were there that day. And every person has their own story. And there's a popular saying that's often done with a little disdain that everyone's the hero of their own story. Well, the problem is that's true. And it's not because people have huge egos. It's because the point of view that you have is the only point of view that you've got. You can hear what other people say, but you've got what you experience. And this is what I experience. And that's why if you hear this, it's going to be somewhat different from what Rabbi Charlie experienced, or what Shane experienced, or what Larry experienced, or what Chief Miller or SAC DeSarno experienced. There's a couple of other things that are kind of important. And the first one here is, and I'm beginning with this because if you take nothing else away, this is it. The training that I received saved our lives, period. That's it. The training is what I was able to fall back on. And that actually dovetailed nicely with this one, which I got I stole from somebody else's presentation, and that is, we do not rise to the level of our expectations, we fall to the level of our training. And we've probably all heard this, but it really is true. What makes humans unique is our ability to learn and to adapt to different situations. We learn best by doing things over and over again till they become part of our muscle memory and they become internalized. And that's why taking one of these classes once and forgetting about it is not the way to do it. You need to do these things over and over again, and you need to practice them. I do, and it paid off for me. Okay, always begin with the bottom line and what the overview is. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we at CBI did, CBI, Congregation Beth Israel, what we did to prepare before the event, when our attacker came and we greeted him, what happened during the event. Since we're focusing mostly on fight today, I want to talk about our weapons of opportunity and keeping our head on swivel and things like that. And then I'm going to conclude with our lessons learned, but before that I'll talk about when we knew that we needed to get out of there and how we knew and some of the decisions that went into that. So our preparation began long before January 15th. As a matter of fact, long before January 15th, I attended training similar to what you've gotten. And like you, I took it seriously, but I never thought I would need it. I put those things that I learned into practice that day, all of them, the run part, the hide part, and the fight part. And it definitely enabled us to survive. I'm going to walk you through some of the decisions that I made, some of the things that reflected from that as we go through. Now, there are other things that we did at CBI that are really important, and if you haven't done, I highly suggest. The first is we established relationships with our police and fire. We invite the police in, well, we invite the fire in every other year, and they come through, they do a walkthrough, we do it in the building and in the outbuildings. We get a lot from it. They tell us some things like, hey, that set of shelves is really just a little bit too close to that exit. They've never written us a ticket or anything like that. They just give us good advice. The second thing is they get to know the building. They get to see it. We've also given them the plans, and the police department also. We've given them the plans, the blueprints, and we keep them online. We've got them on the cloud so anybody can get to them when they need it. Having those blueprints was incredibly important. As it turned out, our president happened to have the blueprints in his truck that day. So he took them over and to the command center, and they were using them throughout the day to know where things were. Similarly, having good relationships with your neighbors. Your neighbors are not just the people immediately around you, but it's the other institutions that are nearby. The command center was at the school down the street. Now, we had no relationship with the school per se, but the police department, of course, does. We had a good relationship with the other churches up and down our street. It's crazy. Our street has, at one end, has the Catholic Church. Then there's a Baptist church across the street. There's us. There's a Methodist church that we're good friends with. There's an Episcopal church. There's a black church. I don't think it's an AME, but it's another one. And then there's another non-denominational church down the lane. The whole street's 1.25 miles. This is really religious row. I realize you guys are all in New York, so everything's tight together. We're in Texas. We don't have a lot of space. Okay, other things we've got. We have a written security plan, and we revisit this every year. We maintain it, we update it. Now, the security plan, you're never going to cover every instance. We certainly did not cover an active hostage taking going on. I mean, mostly we were worried about tornadoes, hail, weather events, things like that. But by going through the act of writing it down, we knew what we were going to do and we knew what we had to do. So we had some ideas about who had to be notified and things like that. We did harden the facility. All of the windows, like over here around the entryway, those have the bullet-resistant glass, not glass, but the film that goes over the windows to keep them from shattering. I will tell you, when the FBI tried to breach, They shattered those windows and they didn't come apart. They do their job, they work. And of course, we had the active threat training. So let's go on to talk about the morning of and what happened then and why it all happened. Okay, now we try to be a warm and welcoming synagogue. I mean, we very much believe in welcoming the stranger, as it is written, and I'm cheating. Okay, this is my bar mitzvah parsha, so I know it well. You know, the stranger who lives among you shall be as one of you. Love the stranger as yourself, because once you were strangers in the excuse me, once you were strangers in the land of Egypt. We try to take that to heart and we try to do it. Even today, even after this event, we've changed some things. I'll talk about them later, but we still try to welcome people in. Now, this was 2022, January. It was right as COVID-19 was ending. We may have forgotten, but everything had shut down. The synagogue was closed. We had gone online. We were just bringing people back in. That's why there were only 4 of us in the building when that happened. It was also an incredibly cold day. It turns out that that was probably the coldest day of the year, and it was certainly the coldest day of that winter. So when a homeless guy comes up and asks, hey, do you have a night shelter? Of course we're going to let him in. And we welcomed him in. We told him, no, we don't have one. But you know what? We're about to start a service. Afterwards, we'll either take you down there or we'll get you an Uber and, you know, get you to the place where you can get taken care of. This guy seemed safe. Okay, we did the initial assessment of him. He seemed like what he was. He was dressed like a homeless guy. He looked cold. He was friendly. He smiled. He seemed genuinely appreciative that we let him in and that we offered him a cup of tea. He made eye contact and he laughed with us. So my point of all that is, if somebody wants to do you harm, they can fool all the best laid plans of all of the greeters. Now, did we learn something? Yeah, we should not have let him bring the backpack in. We should have taken that and locked it up. We should have checked and made sure he didn't have a gun. You know, things like that. And we do those things now, but those were not our worries at that point. So we're going to now talk about the whole day, and we're going to talk about 11 hours in about 5 minutes. So in the very first things that happened, he was sitting in the back of the room. We were all sitting forward. I was probably in, there we go, one of these 2 chairs here, pretty far forward, another, and just off to the side. But we were all spread out. And we go through the morning blessings and the Shema and their blessings. We get to the Amidah. We run through it. I'm finished, so I sit down. I'm adjusting myself, and I hear that very familiar, unmistakable sound of a semi-automatic loading, clicking. It's a very unmistakable sound once you've heard it, but it really seemed out of place. I mean, and our building makes a lot of strange noises. We've got a weird ice maker that groans and makes weird sounds, and a refrigerator that was clicking on and off. So I didn't put 2 and 2 together at that point. Rabbi Charlie thought it was kind of odd too, so he went to the back of the room. I saw him go to the back, and he was basically just going to say, hey, you know, if you want, I'll call you somebody now so you don't have to wait around. It's going to be another hour. And that's when he got up and he starts screaming and he starts making his demands and yelling. So the first thing I did is I picked up the phone next to me. I dialed 911. I turned the phone over on the chair next to me. And then I started moving toward the exit. So I moved from over here. What you can't see in this picture is there's a door right here. So I moved to about this point here. I was getting ready to get out. Now, I knew that I really couldn't run because everybody else would have been trapped. I also know that there's pretty obvious there's nowhere to hide, but I can get down behind one of the chairs. If he really did have the bombs that he claimed to have, it may have provided a little bit of protection. But I was prepared to fight. I had my hands on a chair, but didn't get the opportunity at that point. Part of it was because he calmed down a little bit very quickly. I reassessed the situation. It's like, all right, yes, we're under threat, but let's see where things go. If you get a chance to see the movie Colleyville, highly recommended, of course, you will see that there are a bunch of people saying, wait, what's going on? Does he really have a gun? He's got a gun. One of those people, and only one, called the police department. If you see something, say something. Call the police. The worst thing that'll happen, the absolute worst thing that'll happen, is the police will come and they'll say, no, there's not a problem here. But that got a police officer to our door in less than 2 minutes. We like to joke that it seemed like 2 hours, but it was less than 2 minutes. The first officer showed up on site to find out what was going on. Turns out he was a young guy. He had been with the force for less than 18 months. He quickly assessed that it was a likely hostage situation. He made the right call, and more people were on scene within less than 4 minutes. Okay, the next thing he did is he said something rather crazy to me. I have nothing against you gentlemen, but we all know Jews control the world, Jews control the media, Jews control the banks, Jews control the government. President Trump, President Biden, yes, Biden, will never let even one Jew be harmed. He will certainly let my sister out. The danger of these tropes is that people hear them, and if they're repeated loud enough and often enough, people who are on the edge start to believe them and they take action. Enough so that this guy flew from Manchester to New York, from New York to Dallas, wandered the streets of Fort Worth and then Dallas for 2 weeks, sat out overnight in the cold in a park so that he could attack us the next day. That's the danger of the tropes. He then wanted us to call the chief rabbi of the United States. I tried to explain that we might have a chief rabbi in the UK where he's from, but we don't have a chief rabbi here. I don't think it would be possible. So then he said he wanted to call Rabbi Bookdahl because she's influential and she plays guitar and she's a woman. She'll be able to get this terrorist that he wanted released out. He never took our phones. He even let us call home. So I called my wife very quickly and I said, I'm at CBI. There's a gunman here. He says he's got a bomb. I love you. Things don't look good. And that was pretty much all I said to her. I then called my kids and basically told them the same thing. We were able to do some texts and post on Facebook. And other folks saw that. As a matter of fact, a woman I went to high school with works for a 3-letter acronym agency, and she called one of her contacts at the FBI and said, hey, something's going on here. This is not normal. So check it out. So things can get through if you want. That's all in the first hour, probably in the first 15 to 20 minutes. We then settled into a very long day. Most of this time was spent talking and listening to his lectures. He really hated Islam in America because they were not strong enough for him, or in the UK for that matter. I guess an equal opportunity racist there. And he very much wanted to get this woman freed, and was firmly convinced that by doing this actions that he could do it. At some point, and I can't tell you when, the FBI hostage negotiating team, the elite unit from the FBI, showed up on site, and they took over the negotiations. They flew in from Quantico, Virginia. It's about a 2.5, 3-hour flight. And they were there and very quickly took around the building and took over, and they did the negotiations. Around 5 p.m. Central, the first hostage was let out. It's kind of an interesting tidbit, only way I can say it. So basically, our attacker says something to the effect of, says to me, okay, Jeff, I'll make you a deal. I'll let you go home. You can get some food, but you have to come back. And if you don't come back, I'm going to kill these guys, and I'm going to give you 30 minutes. I said, well, I appreciate, but I mean, I got to be honest. It's going to take me 15 minutes to get home, 15 minutes to get back, and it's going to take me 20 minutes to cook and eat something. So I couldn't make the half hour anyway. And even if I could, right now I said, sure, I'll come back, but My wife might convince me not to. I may change my mind. The police might not let me back in. And at this point, I'm laughing a little bit, and he starts laughing. Yeah, you're right. You're right. All right, well, who should I let out? Well, one of the guys, Shane, had appeared ill. He's type 1 diabetic, and he looked pretty bad, and he had been throwing up, and like I said, he looked pretty bad. So I said, let Shane go. Now, much to Shane's credit, he said, no, not me, let Larry go. Larry was, I don't know, 84 at this point, couldn't hear very well, and said, no, let him go. Real mensch. Anyway, by letting him out, we got some food in and we got some medical supplies in, mostly because, like I said, Shane was diabetic, wanted to check his blood. I'm a type 2 diabetic, wanted to check mine. Yes, it was soaring. But getting the food in allowed us to do something else. Rather than sit kind of up here near where our attacker was, I got everybody to sit over here. I made Shane sit over near me when he was first feeling sick, and then I got Rabbi Charlie to sit over there with us then. What that meant was we were all together, and we were within 15 feet of the door. Now, Charlie's thinking was, I'm the rabbi, I'm responsible, I want him focused on me, not everybody else. My thinking was, I want everybody near the door so that we can get out. The whole time I was thinking about getting out. In the last half hour, I'll come back to the last half hour in a couple of slides, but that is where he started devolving and we knew we needed to get out. Let's talk about weapons of opportunity. So first of all, run, hide, fight is not linear. It is not linear. It is dynamic. First you can run, then you can fight. First you can hide, then you can fight. You can fight, then you can run. All these, the order isn't important once it gets started. Look for changes because things do change. They are dynamic situations. So at different times, looking for opportunities to fight, I was looking for a weapon. At one point, he let us go into the kitchen to get some sodas. And I saw the block of knives there on the counter. And I thought to myself, well, I could grab a knife. They're sharp, or at least they're supposed to be. Then I realized I'm wearing a short sleeve shirt. Where am I going to hide this thing while I'm trying to get up to him? And second, you've all heard the adage about not bringing a gun to a knife fight. I actually literally laughed about that at the time. The next thing I did is look for the fire extinguisher. Because with the fire extinguisher, you can create that blockage so that people can't see. And if he can't see what's coming at him, I can hit him with the fire extinguisher. And I wouldn't stop either. That would have been easy. Except about 2 weeks before, based on one of those recommendations from the fire department, we moved the fire extinguisher from inside the kitchen to outside next to where he was. Oh well, best laid plans, right? I point out the cup of tea because this is Larry. As you can see, he's a young, spry bodybuilder, super athletic type of guy, right? No. Larry's a great guy. I consider him a close friend. But Larry was asked to get him a cup of tea. So his plan was to take that cup of tea and throw it in his face. Unfortunately, he couldn't get within 10 feet of him. He made him put the tea down on the table. And of course, we've all heard this story of the chair. Now, this is Rabbi Charlie. And again, you can see he's not a very big guy. Throwing the chair was not about hitting our attacker in the head to knock him out so we could go and hog tie him and, save the day. It wasn't about that at all. It was about creating the distraction to get those 1 or 2 extra steps. Any Leonard Skinner fans out there? Get that 1 or 2 steps so that we can move toward the door. And it proved to be vital and important for it. All right, I'm going to talk now about our escape and what happened in it. This is from WFAA Channel 8 here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Okay, so what happened? Siddiqui, I try never to say her name. Our attacker, sometimes called Lady Al-Qaeda, sentenced to 86 years in federal custody. being held at the Federal Medical Correction Facility, Carswell. Air Force folks, that's the old Carswell Air Force Base. So she was being held there. That's why he chose us. Besides, he thought that seizing any Jews would be able to get what he wanted. He learned that she was not going to help and that she wanted nothing to do with him. He realized at that point that this had all been a waste, and he started to devolve. He yelled something to the effect of, "This is to the hostage negotiator. Then I'm going to put a bullet in each one of these men's brains. Get down on the floor." And when he said that, I stared at him, made eye contact, and I didn't break eye contact. And I don't know whether I said it or whether I just mouthed it, but I shook my head and said no. And we maintained eyes locked. And then he looked away. And he looked away in the most uncomfortable way. And that's when he started playing with the soda that was on his, out in front of him. He took the gun out of his shooting hand and into his other hand to open it. That's when Rabbi Charlie yelled, "Run." I want to stop here for just a second. There were several times that I thought about getting out of the building. And I could have told everybody to get out with me, but I couldn't come up with how to tell them, "I'm leaving now. Let's all leave together." Run. It really never dawned on me that it's that simple. Just yell, "Run." Okay, so we run out. I let Shane get in front of me because, again, I thought he was sick, and I'm holding him, and you might be able to see it here. So close, there was zero daylight between us. We push through the door. He peels off to the right. I fall forward. I have no idea what I tripped on. Charlie throws the chair, and we're out. I go and hide under the bushes. My plan had been to go through the bushes, but I tumbled, lost my glasses, knocked the wind out of myself. I can't see without my glasses. I hear, "Run, run, come to the front, come to the front." I miraculously found my glasses, and I ran, and my high school soccer coach would have been proud of me. I ran my best 40 ever. The FBI agents asked, "Was there anybody else in there?" "Just our shooter." They breached the back door. It's very loud. And then they tried to breach the front, and that was by shooting it out. Within 15 to 20 seconds of breaching, he was dead and the event was over. So what you're going to see is this door come open. There we are going out. That's Charlie going out. Here comes our attacker. You see he's got the gun. He pointed it toward me, but I think it would have been up and to the right. At least that's what I keep telling myself. And it was over. And that's pretty much the whole story.
Jeff, thank you so much for that. And one, wow. I want, before I ask you a question, really just to make a couple statements on some things you said, because I think they'll really resonate. And I'll go backwards.
Sure.
And talking about the film on the door, we encourage our community to put ballistic shield, the 3M film on. We know it's not bullet proof, it's not bullet resistance, but it's shatterproof. And I've seen that door and that window, and folks, it works.
There's not much left of it.
Yeah, be mindful of that. Second, the things we talked about at the very beginning. Thank you for addressing weapons of opportunity and going through everything. The positioning was very important for everybody to learn and think about. And last is that aggression, right? You ran your best 40 ever, right, at the end. And that's where you used your aggression while you were thinking about, how am I going to fight back with different weapons? Everybody thought about it a little differently, but you all came together. And what I will say, and everybody on this, I assume, is thinking about your selflessness of wanting Shane to go, and then Shane's selflessness for letting Larry go is just unbelievable, which leaves Jeff, Shane, and Charlie there with the attackers. All three of them had that mindset. Before I ask you a question, there was a chat in the room right before you started talking. And as regarding freezing, unfortunately, people are afraid to swarm because they don't want to be killed by a shooter. Absolutely. We understand that. That fight back portion for Jeff was that. Some people might be in that position if they're coming in the room to fight that weapon. The goal here is to go through this training, demystify active shooter training, and get empowered and more resilient when you do that. That's why we have this training. So I wanted to say that. Since you were in there, and let me start with the first questions. How did you, and you heard about that, how our heartbeat goes up and down in times of danger. How did you control your emotions throughout that day?
So there were a couple of things. Okay, one cannot be at super high stress the whole time. You just can't. Or maybe some people can. I certainly couldn't. So the initial 10 minutes, that hyper focus, I knew exactly where the door was. I started heading toward the door. I always looked at, I never thought I was going to die. I knew it was likely, but I didn't expect that. My assessment was, how am I getting out of here? So from the beginning, I very quickly got down into a place where I would have at least a little bit of cover. I tried to keep the gun between, or a chair between me and the gun. A couple of times, I love this, he said he was Marine trained, yet when he was holding the firearm, he had his finger on the trigger. And twice, it was like, at that point we were calling him Ajax, because that's the name he gave us. Ajax, look, man, I know you're a Marine, but look, that firearm is new to you. Take your finger off the trigger. You don't want to cough and have it go off or things like that. That was actually one of my big worries, is that he would accidentally shoot somebody, not purposely. When I realized how bad he was at controlling it, I was much less worried about attacking him, that he could get a shot off. Now, I am not military. I do enjoy it. Firearms, I do enjoy shooting. I'm not a gun nut. I don't have a whole collection, but I like target shooting. What can I say? So I had a little bit of feeling. I used what I knew and what I could evaluate and what I could think about. How am I getting out of here, to keep my mind in a good place? I did do some square breathing. It's kind of funny because I'd only read about that over Christmas break before this event. So 2 weeks beforehand, maybe 3 weeks before. And I had used that to keep my get my heart rate to come down a little bit. All that being said, when I checked my blood sugar, it was over 200. And normally I run 110, 120, 130 at the most. So, we were high. And I will add that for the full year, I was not able to get my blood sugar under control. So these physiological reactions are real, but you can absolutely use the forward parts of your mind to control your reactions. And plan.
Jeff, let's stay there for a moment. Sure. And I don't want to dive deep too personal with you, but I think it's a fair question. One I should ask at the very beginning. How are you doing today? How has this changed you mentally? And what do you do different now?
Oh, let me answer the first two, and then I'll come to the what I do different, because that's a lot of stuff. Okay, so the first thing that's changed me, my emotions are much closer to the surface than they were. Normally doing these things, I have a point that I choke up a little bit. It's just the way it is. That was a big one. I do try to, well, let me go back. We refer to that as the 100-pound day, because between myself, my wife, Shane, and his wife, we put on over 100 pounds, just among the four of us. Now, I've taken all that off. Karen has taken all that off. I don't know about Shane and Jennifer. I think they have. But it's hard, okay? It physiologically changes you or us. It has changed us, and that's there. Now, what are those permanent changes? Okay, number one, I know where my exits are, always. And if I don't know, I will ask. If I go into a place that's new and I can't figure out immediately, I ask somebody. And if I don't get an answer I like, I leave, and we have. Um, Other things, I am extremely security conscious. I went to a synagogue in Chicago because my son and grandkids and daughter-in-law live up there, and we were up there to see them, and it happened to be my first wife's yard site. So I called a synagogue, said, "Hey, do you mind? I need to say a Kaddish." Oh, of course. The fact that they bring it, emotion, right? The fact that they wouldn't ask for ID, weren't checking it, would let anybody walk in, really bothered me. So I made a point of saying something to the rabbi and saying, "Hey, guys, this is real. I'm happy to get on and talk about this with you guys." The other one that I noticed, and I didn't realize this, I always sit now in the back row of the synagogue where I can see the entrance. Because if somebody's coming in, they're going through me first, period. Um, I didn't realize until about 2 weeks ago because I'd always been doing it. And then because somebody was in my seat, I sat in a different place. I didn't realize how uncomfortable I was with people behind me in the synagogue. And I'm there, most weeks. So those are the kinds of things that have been a big change.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that with us. What is your overall message that you have? And I think you've already said it at the beginning. Say it again so everybody knows what your message is, please.
So the message to you folks is the training saved my life. Take it seriously, take the training, take it over and over again because you always pick up something. There's always some little tidbit that you never thought about. Someone says something a little bit differently and it makes you think about it differently. Do it, put it into action. When you walk in to your places, that's not just the synagogue, your place of work where you go shopping, put these things into practice. Be looking around, know where exits are. Um, be looking for things that are out of place, out of character. You don't necessarily have to freak out about them, but you should still be aware and that's okay. That's not being racist. That's not being ableist. It's none of those. It's about keeping yourself safe. The second one is, and this is what I normally do to the greater community, it's the dangers of racist tropes. And we're hearing a lot of it right now. Um, what he said, and I think I mentioned this earlier, gentlemen, I have nothing against you gentlemen, but everyone knows Jews control the banks, Jews control the media, Jews control the government. He really believed it. And when these things get repeated over and over again, people who are on the edge, and I do think that, I'm not a mental health professional, but it would not surprise me if he was mentally ill. Um, People take action, and not in a good way. We are seeing that here. I'm on my soapbox. You shouldn't have let me up. We're seeing that here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, specifically in my city, where two state house candidates have been promising how they're going to fight Sharia in Texas. Because, we have this huge threat of Sharia in the Bible, in the buckle of the Bible Belt. It's not okay. It's not okay when somebody says it about us, and it's not okay when somebody says it about somebody else. So we need to stand up and say, hey, that's not okay.
Jeff, thank you so much, sir. We have a few minutes left. If you have a question for Jeff, please put it in the chat room. I just want to share just a few updates for us and just to let everybody know. There are a group of phenomenal regional security directors here in the greater New York City area under CSI. We have 6 core courses: active threat, which we're talking about today, situational awareness, cyber training, which is so important, de-escalation, daily security practices, and a TTX. And that's just nothing more than a facilitated discussion. I want to make sure everybody knows that they have the ability to get these trainings. We have a great team. Just please reach out to us. We also have training on March 16th in person. Jamie, if you have it handy, I'm going to ask you to put the behavioral threat assessment team course in the chat room. Folks, we are building our own behavioral threat analysis team here in the New York City area. And we have a great connectivity with the Secret Service that's going to be there in person with us in Manhattan on March 16th, starting at 9:30 a.m. Please sign up for it. Our goal is really to identify these threats, assess these threats, and work with our law enforcement partners. Very important to understand that and what we need to do. So if you're at a day school, if you're at a JCC and you have a known threat or a known individual that's plaguing us in security, come to it. And we're really going to talk through how we're going to work through and help our law enforcement partners, help our own intelligence team as we build out an assessment of persons of interest. Please sign up for these trainings, request these trainings. We are going to build out a whole run, hide, fight utilizing all survivors and talk about run, hide, fight. That's available as well. And I just want to finish up with what we talked about today. This fight portion is probably one of the most kind of, I don't want to say it's a controversial topic. It's not controversial. You fight back to save your life. But we don't really promote too much of the fight part of it because that is our last resort. But we do need to train at the highest levels. And that comment at the beginning really makes you think, like, people are afraid. And I understand that and I respect that. But I want you all to think, if you're a parent, what would you do to save your child? If it's in a burning building, would you run into that burning building to save your child? I'll guarantee pretty much everybody on this call says yes. It's the same thing when we're fighting for our lives. And so we're not here to scare you. We are here, honestly, to empower our community to stand up for itself when somebody attacks us. We want to be smart. Fighting back is our last option. We will only use that as our last option. And with everything that's going on and that increased threat into the Jewish community that we see, given the facts of the war with Iran, we knew our threat level is going to be increased. What should you be doing on a daily basis? You should be living your best life, your best Jewish life. I get asked the question all the time, should we raise the Israeli flag in front of our school, our shul, our JCC? I tell people, raise that flag, raise it high, be proud. We need to prepare our community so we can live our best life. With that, I don't know, Jamie, is there any questions in here?
Yeah, there are a couple.
Okay, so let's go to them. How did your synagogue protocols change after the attack?
So the big thing that we changed is we now have a licensed peace officer at every event, and sometimes more than one plus a car at every public event. I use the word peace officer. I don't know if that's universal, but in Texas, peace officers are certified. If you're a police officer, a marshal, sheriff's deputy, there's a bunch of others. But these are people who are badge-wearing, gun-carrying folk in law enforcement. And we have them rather than, I'm looking for a nice word, other types of security. So these are off-duty people. Security costs are our second highest after salaries, after personnel expenses. It has, it's affected things. It really affects what we're able to do. Secondly, we don't let people bring in big bags. Even when we know the people, we check them. Diaper bags, that's the most common. Diaper bags during the holidays for people who only show up on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and sometimes they only show up, Kol Nidre, right? So we don't necessarily know who these people are. So we inspect bags. We don't let large bags in, and that's what we do. We also train heavily. There was another question in here about, how do you encourage people to go when they don't want to sign up, they don't want to come? Well, you just keep offering it. I'm going to do a shameless plug for the movie Colleyville. You're welcome to show it. There is a fee. I mean, our director does it for a living. He has two bad habits: living indoors and eating. So there is a fee for it, but I'm sure that can be worked out, and I can hit Brad up. Brad will hit me, and I'll get back to you with the context. But show the movie as the introduction to your weekend when you're doing training. It shows people, look, this is real.
Jeff, do you have metal detectors at your school?
We do not. We are thinking about it, but again, there's two things to go. We don't have a separate a breezeway entryway. It's just the doors, right? So, it's 80 degrees out there today. Yeah, I'm rubbing it in, y'all. But we don't have that kind of cold where we need to keep out the cold, so we don't have that ability to lock it out. And metal detectors slow things down significantly. It is far more effective so far for us to be able to stop people who we don't know immediately. And we've got the officer right there in full kit. I will also add, the number of people who are licensed to carry in our community is probably fairly large. Plus, it's also a constitutional carry, so people who may not be licensed are carrying. And we're not going to stop them from it because it makes people feel comfortable. The people that I know, I do give the report, Firearms and the Faithful, to them, which basically says, even trained officers who have to train every year miss 70% of the shots they take because they're trying to hit one person. And the importance of saying, because the other thing is, if you're going to pull out a gun, make sure the police officer knows who you are and where you're sitting so she doesn't shoot you because she's looking just at the gun. So that may be less of a problem in New York, but it's the kind of thing people need to be aware of.
Yeah, Jeff, and you're right. That is not a bigger problem in New York because of the laws of New York. Texas is a completely different animal.
Whole other country.
Jeff, thank you so much for your time. We're right at a little bit after the hour. I don't see any more questions. Please keep, we do this monthly. Get on here monthly. Look for our trainings. Sign up for the March 16th. Thank you for everybody that attended. And stay safe out there. We will see you soon. Thank you very much.